Okay, in this crude video, I'm going to show you how to get your course started if you're working with Blackboard, and a course has been copied over for you from a previously designed course that you're going to be using in another term. So there's two big views inside Blackboard. I prefer the CNM view here, just is a little bit cleaner for the style that I like, and you can change how and which courses and what order you display here with this little gear icon. If you go to the courses section, there is some usefulness to this. Number one, if you're looking for the CRN of a course, boom, there it is. You don't have to look too far to find it. It's not viewable on the other side. And again, you can click on the gear here and clean up your course. I almost never use this unless I'm specifically looking for a CRN, so I don't clean it up. But in this view, we're going to be working on EMS 1001 as kind of the prototype. So go ahead and click on there, get on in. Very important to get started. You do want to know about the edit mode. Turning edit mode on means that you see it as an instructor and you have the ability to change things, but you'll also see things that are hidden from student view. So if you want to try and see what is viewable by the student, click the edit mode to off, and you can see it was a hidden piece of content for students. I could see it as an instructor previously, now I can't. This isn't 100% is what students will view. For example, my grades isn't something that you're going to get a lot of value out of because you're not in as a student. You can make a demo student for something like that if you need to. But for the most part, the view of it is pretty easy to see for the student mode when you turn it off. So you can see this is hidden from students for whatever reason, probably because it hasn't been deployed yet. So we're going to go ahead and edit it. So anytime that you have a element, I guess I'll call it, because the term item is specific to a tool in here. When you have an element within Blackboard, the editing of that element comes from clicking on the down arrow. And sometimes it's hard to see, so just hover over the title of the element you're trying to work on, and you'll find eventually that that arrow shows up. We're going to click on edit, but you have all these other tools you can use here. Copy and move are probably pretty frequently utilized, and then for advanced uses you can use adaptive release. I wouldn't recommend that at this level just yet. So let's go ahead and edit it. We're actually just going to update it for an instructor. All right, a couple things on this screen. So this is called the what you see is what you get editor, and so as you type it in here, that's how it should display to the student. One catch though is that it all kind of depends on what size of screen the student's using, and Blackboard isn't very responsive, so it doesn't try to change its format to make it look right on a screen, as you'll become frustrated with. Our new learning management system seems to though, so that's good. So you can open up this box and view a little bit more of what you're working on as a field by just clicking the little lines there. Any attachments you add here are going to be attached kind of to the top of the item. I'm sure there's some in here that I can highlight for you. And so sometimes it's nice to attach a number of files if they just need the number of files from that one item, if they're like just for download, for example. If you want to put a file in here that someone can view, and it's by itself as almost an element, if you will, then you don't want to attach it. You can use another tool to do that, and I'll show you that in a little bit. But if you're just trying to let the folks have something they can download straight away, and it's a number of lectures maybe that they're trying to bulk download, this is a good place to put it. And then finally, we can make this viewable or not viewable by basically clicking on permit viewer users to view this content. In this case, it's not viewable, but it is set to yes. The reason it's not viewable is because we have date restrictions, and so this was set to be available after the 23rd of last January, and now closed at April 10th of last year. And so that's a common thing if you want students to only have a certain time period that they can access it. In this case, the welcome tab, sometimes it just copies over some settings. I don't know how to explain it, but turning these off is probably going to solve a lot of the issues that you might come up with. But you can use this to strategically deploy something later at a certain date and then close on a certain date. Very useful for things like exams, so the students can't get in and work on them after they've taken them. All right, so instructor name here, in this case, it's actually not me as the lead instructor. It's Amy, so let's go ahead and get her info in here. Okay, so you can change the color of these sets of text as you need to. Just be mindful that there are students in our classes that may not be able to see very well if we use colors that are common in color blindness. So red's something you want to try and stay away from, because to someone who doesn't see red clearly, it doesn't actually add any emphasis. It actually makes it a little bit lighter and harder to see. So standard black is kind of what we're looking for most text, but you can use some colors. You just got to make sure those colors are good contrast for the course. That'll become more important, especially as classes move towards a fully online model. All right, so we're done with that part of it. We're going to go ahead and hit submit. Okay, now this is now viewable, and we can confirm that just by kind of clicking here and seeing. That's how the student will see it. Now, mind you, if it's not viewable, though, from the edit mode, you'll be able to see a line here again that says that the students can't view it. So we're on a page right now, and so this element right here is actually an item. And you can build content by adding things like an item. An item is great for just text, essentially, making kind of a page or a bit of information, but you can add things like a audio file. As I mentioned earlier, if you want to just put a single file that the student sees once and it's there, and they can see it actually, in most cases, depending on the file format, just straight up in there like a form, they can see the forward, almost like embedding it, then this would be another choice. But as mentioned, if I had added some of the files to this item when I was editing it, it would actually post them right here as links to download. They wouldn't see the whole thing, they would just see the link to download. All right, great. So let's just cruise through start here. This is usually done for you, and it's especially important to note that when this is done, distance learning makes the changes so that the start here module is got the most correct information for that term. And that's good because, you know, we had for a long time the wrong academic integrity video in here. It wasn't getting updated and so on. So we do want to edit this section here. I'll come back to that though. We'll do that basically by just clicking down, edit, and then copying some of the things out of our syllabus into this spot. This is a link that the students will take to the actual syllabus. I haven't uploaded it yet, but I'll show you where it goes. And then all these little things are very important that students go through to make sure that they can get as much out of Blackboard as possible. So if they're having issues and they don't know how to navigate Blackboard, which might be common in a entry-level EMS class, then you probably want to make sure that they're steering through the Start Here module. Most students actually avoid it after they've done one class, but there can be some valuable information in here, and our format is a little different sometimes than other classes. All right, now the menu on the left, we're going to go to the syllabus. So we're going to replace this syllabus with the correct one, and it's currently hidden. That's okay because it's the wrong syllabus, but this is actually a file, and so let's go edit it and kind of see a little different, right? So the item we saw before, you typed in information and you can add things as an attachment, but here the attachment actually becomes the file that they view. So I'm going to make this viewable by removing the dates. And when the student clicks on it, this is what they'll see. So depending on the tool, this must be, I'm assuming it's in a Word document file, and so that has to be downloaded and viewed. But if it's a PDF, then it'll display here as if they're looking at the PDF already open. So that's a little difference there, so we'll edit that. I prefer to do PDF for my syllabi just so that a student can't make any changes and threaten that something was different that they added. You do need to go to the Instructor Information tab. The Instructor Information is useful. You're going to talk a little bit about yourself, and you'll talk about the expectations students have of you. The Instructor Information should be inside this folder here, actually. And so you'll fill in each of these little sections, and it's very strongly encouraged you add a picture, especially if it's a highly online class. But you do want to fill out these things here. So I'm going to leave that for the lead instructor to go back and edit. Going to step out here and say that these are okay, but they actually should be inside the folder. All right, after the instructor information is updated, again, what you see is what you get. Click edit and then type in the stuff that you need to. From the what you see is what you get toolbox, you'll see there's areas for adding images and such. Let's go ahead and turn our Blackboard calendar on. The Blackboard calendar can be synced with the student's mobile calendar or even our Outlook calendar. There's some information on how to do that somewhere. I'll try and get that available to us. But anytime that you set a deadline inside Blackboard for something that exists inside Blackboard. So what I mean by that is if you have a quiz that the student takes in Blackboard, then that quiz due date is going to show up on their calendar whether you have this clicked or not. If it's not viewable, then the student can't see the calendar and see what's due. They have to work from whatever other resource you gave them. Catch though, if you're doing a quiz in class and it's not done on Blackboard, it's like a paper quiz or something like that. If it's not done in Blackboard, then the due date won't show up in the calendar because there's no item to enter it to. There's not a quiz in Blackboard to set the due date for. So when working with stuff outside of Blackboard due dates, it's really encouraged that you add it to the Blackboard calendar here. What you add to the calendar will then be displayable by the student's calendar as well. Now my calendar will show when I log in, as will the instructor's calendar when they log in here. So it's pretty messy, but I'll just kind of show you the quick ins and outs. These are menu items, and so menu items can actually be hidden or shown to be viewable, all depending on preferences. By clicking on this down box, we can get a few things: rename the link, show link, and delete. So we're going to show this link, and then it just removes that little X next to it. If I click on this, then we enter the calendar. Now, in here for each student and for the instructor, any class that you're in Blackboard is going to have a color-coded, and you can change this in Blackboard, color-coded set of dates, and so you can turn those on and off. So I'm only displaying a few here, but I am displaying some of my other class due dates. Oh my God, there's a lot to do. But when you scroll all the way down, this is where you and your students will get access to importing the calendar and syncing it with your device. So you would just click this Get External Calendar link, and what it's going to do is open up this link thread. You're going to copy this, and then you'll paste it by adding it to the calendar. And you can look up for Android and iOS devices how to do that very easily on YouTube and some written outlines. One thing that I would recommend, though, is if you're doing this like for your phone or your iPad, it may work that you open this if you can navigate to it. Blackboard's not really good at navigating on mobile devices, but the easiest thing would be if you can navigate to this point, you can just copy and then paste it on the device. Either that or just send it to yourself as an email or whatever. Now, this is unique to you, so if you share this with everybody in the class, they're going to actually see all of your calendars, not their own, if that's what's important. So each student needs to do this, and each instructor needs to do this individually once they're signed in. And doing this is going to sync actually their entire calendar that's selected here in the check marks to show. All right, so very highly advisable, and you can see I've got due dates here. If you need to add like an open date, then you can add those as individual entries, or say that quiz I mentioned earlier that's in class. Well, let's say it's tomorrow on the 29th here. I can click here, and I'm going to say in class quiz. Since you have multiple calendars, you can select whichever calendars you're a lead or a TA in, and it'll be associated with that. So for here, it automatically defaults to the current class I'm in. And you can set the time, you can put some event descriptions, and that will show up. So I'm just going to put this here as a test, and I'm going to delete it. But let's save it, and now you can see that that has appeared. If I click on it, I can see the information. All right, so students can see the stuff that you put in here as well. And then let's see, I think there's an option where you can add stuff that's just viewable by you in your personal calendar. Yeah, here it is right here, the personal calendar, and that's selectable from the drop-down box. All right, cool. Play around with that as much as you like to, but it is helpful for students. Okay, well, where the work's done, right? So that's in the learning modules. All these learning modules and folders and things, they'll have to kind of be oriented and organized, and will have due dates and open and close dates set in them. Now, I think when you're starting, it's probably good to not use a whole lot of open and close dates for viewability if it's something that is not a quiz or a test. Because you're going to find that students are looking for something and you forgot to change it or whatever, and they can't find it, and you don't know until they email you and say I need an extension and blah, blah, blah. So until you're kind of familiar with it and you want to tightly button down your course, I wouldn't play with that just yet. So what we're going to end up doing is making all of these viewable. But the problem is I'm going to have to click into each one of them, go edit and change it to make this change. Or there's another option. I'll show you that in just a second. Learning modules, this is where everything is, right? So this is where the students are going to get access to their course content, curriculum, downloads, documents, all that good stuff. Okay, we'll have to come back to that. Discussions, we won't use a whole lot of discussions in here, so we can actually hide that, unless you plan to use assigned discussions online. But since it's in person for this specific class and Blackboard's just a backup, then it's kind of not all that helpful. So we can actually delete some of these things. So I'm just going to go ahead and not just hide it, but we'll delete. It'll ask you to confirm, delete. That way it's just not there. Students already can't see it, but it just makes it a little cleaner. We're not going to use any blogs for this, unless you choose to, obviously. Journals. Journals are kind of intimate between you and the individual student. So it's kind of similar to discussions, except it's just a discussion between the student and you, the reader. So it's almost like a personal entry for them that you review, and can be graded with rubrics and all that good stuff. We'll delete it. You could utilize groups if you'd like to. Here, these groups, though, are kind of more designed so that you could say, group 1, you get this assignment, group 2, you get that assignment, and you can kind of change, you can make discussions based on the groups, not necessarily the groups that you set up in your lab class or theory class. They could jive with that if you have online stuff for them to do in groups, but we don't use that very often at this level. So delete. Wikis are kind of a nice little tool. We'll call it kind of like our glossary if you want to build it. Not necessary, but it's kind of your own internal Wikipedia if you'd like. You can add that later. And notice I'm deleting a whole bunch of stuff, but if I wanted to add something, I just come up here and add it. And you got a couple different choices, even to get a subheader and a divider, as we have here and here. And you can move these things pretty easily by hovering over the item until you see that up and down arrow, and then you can just drag it wherever you want. Nice, easy drag and drop. Okay, course communication. Unless you plan to use the Prompt2IM or Collaborate Ultra, which is kind of like, obviously this is Instant Messenger. Collaborate Ultra is a very stripped down, like, video conferencing program within Blackboard. It allows you to record, and you have a little whiteboard that you can use. So it's great if you're going to be doing like at distance classes. I'll leave it in here so the instructor can choose whether or not to use it as needed. And then we want to make sure that the help apps, the help links are all visible because we need our students to access them.